In life I was silent, in death I now sing. Talking about a tree. When it was alive and standing up, it didn't make any noise. When it's a dead tree and cut up into wood, it can be made into violins and guitars and things like that that make noise and music. This is Appalachian spruce. Well, some of my favorite comes right off of this mountain right up here, White Top. It rings pretty long and a little high pitched. When I first had an interest in doing it, of any kind, you know, like just trying to make a guitar, and some of those very first ones I tried to make, I was probably 10, be 51, that I've been messing with guitars, and I thought these guitars were pretty exciting things to work on. I thought it was a step up from the toys and stuff that I made when I was a kid. Eventually got, you know, making them because I couldn't afford to buy a good one, you know. I'm all the time telling about these guitars, you know, how the way I make them is you take good wood and a good whittling knife and cut off what don't look like a guitar, and right there's a real good picture of a bunch of stuff that don't look like a guitar. And sort of hate to throw them out. These little curly cues are so pretty, but we'll hopefully live long enough to make plenty more of them. So that top is getting pretty close.
He has this ability to play music on the instrument that he builds, and the combination of the two feed on each other, and that's why the guitars are so near perfect, you know.
It's the seventh one I made back in 1968, and I sold it, traded it to the Moonshiners bunch. When I told my granny, said, if I can make money like this, I know what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I'm going to make these guitars, you know. And I was glad to get this old guitar back because it's got history with it, and it really looks beat up and all that, but it looks pretty cool. I like it, you know.
Actually, when he got it back, it's in pieces, and we were going to try to just patch it up so we can hang it on the wall. wall, but we just kept fooling with it until we got it back to where it plays.
I think they held it up and probably thought if you could shoot through the sound hole, it wouldn't hurt it. Probably. They didn't think about it coming out the back. I guess I've known Herb so long, I can't remember exactly the very first time I ever met him, but I think I was jamming with him at a fiddler's convention probably.
And Wayne was behind me playing that guitar. And he was eating that guitar alive. I could hear him back there. I said, my God, get this boy a mic up here.
He's been one of my favorite people that's to help me work and play music with. Took one spell for a few years when he didn't come around music or anything, and I was lost the whole time. I always wanted to go play music with Herb, but that didn't last too long. He was back into it.
He says, "Oh, I can't play that fancy stuff." Well, he could play fancier stuff than he does. He don't want to play anything any fancier. He wants it to sound like, if it's a wildwood flower, he wants it to sound like a wildwood flower. So he stays with the tune.
Hit plenty of bad notes. If you keep going, most likely people won't know it. Well, that's what I grew up with, is just a good pocket knife, and it's just my favorite thing. I just like using hand tools, and that's the ultimate hand tool because you have it in your pocket most of the time, where you can put your hand on it anytime. And like I say, the chisel and sander and pocket knife has to amount to the equivalent of my CNC machine, and they just don't have a computer hooked to them.
He can look at anything and then carve it. It's transfer of message he sees through his eye to his hands. He can do that. One of the few people that I've ever seen that can.
Trust your instincts to the way a piece of wood vibrates and sounds and feels almost more than anything. The way you can tell a piece of wood when you have it in your hands that's going to vibrate clean and clear and sound good, and you put a bunch of them together that all do that, and you usually come up with something good. To me, I think wood talks to you all the time. It's a little bit hard to describe what I'm listening to, but I think that woods, is speaking to me all the time. It has something to say, every little vibration, ring, and everything. Whoop. Talking about that thing. That's only the second time it's rung all day. Yeah. Hello? The what? Yeah. Yeah. Is that right? Surely not. A fella called me yesterday there that was just driving. Good way to pass time is call me and talk to me for an hour. And I don't like that much. Well, I got a nice 3 there. One that I stamped a number 1 in, the one Albert told me how to bend wood and helped me with some. That one was, I was about probably 16. I think I was 17 when I got it done. But as far as around here, Albert was the closest thing there was, to an instrument maker, and he made fiddles, which I had absolutely no interest in. But I knew no use to go to Albert. He said, "Well, I don't know nothing about those things," and he didn't make them, and I could learn a whole lot more by looking inside an old Martin than I could from anybody He was always encouraging. Albert was always that to anybody. If Albert was my mentor, I learned more of that kind of stuff from him than anything else. Never forget Albert as long as I can remember anybody. Gerald is probably the main one who's hung around here the longest and worked with me in the shop here since when he was young till he got into his own business.
And when I graduated from college, I started just hanging out in his shop and started doing little things, and eventually just started doing repair work for him all the time. Pretty much everything I know about playing music and making the instruments, I pretty much learned from him, so I have to give him credit for all that, because I certainly wouldn't never been able to do it if he hadn't helped me. I sort of see him as the next step down from Albert, and then I see Spencer as the one next generation below me, so sort of a passing down of the craft.
Gerald and Wayne, they're just extremely generous as far as knowledge and advice goes. I guess there's enough bad sounding instruments in the world that wouldn't bother them to have a few more good ones maybe, so they're doing everything they can.
I guess I don't have any kids of my own, and I guess it was time for somebody else to learn how to do it, so Spencer came along, was interested in doing it, and we got along good, picked music together and stuff, so it just seemed like the natural, he was the person if he wanted to do it, and it turns out he did want to do it.
The same was done for me, so I wouldn't feel right if there was a young kid who come around really wanted to learn and was really serious about it. You know, you'd have to help them. You know, it's just part of the code, you know.
Even as old as I am, I can still remember my childhood and how I grew up playing music and how important it was to me for somebody like E.C. Ball or Albert Hash or my dad or somebody to take time to play with me. And I just remember what a thrill that was, and it's just something I feel like I need to do, and I enjoy doing that. Well, this is one of those tunes that I learned from one of the older folks in the community, Mr. E.C. Ball. The tune is written right here in this community. One of E.C.'s tunes, while he's sitting out there at the store, made up this tune. It's a G round and a C round, another G round.
I probably don't know it, but
well, you can do it. Living here where I do was not exposed to that many different kinds of music and stuff. You know, our music was homemade. E.C. was he was like a folk hero in this community here, and he did a nice job playing that guitar. Made it sound good, and he was definitely an influence on me. Guitar can't wait to make sound. These guys like old Stradivarius, those guys didn't have sandpaper. This was their finish job, but you can see it does a good job. I saw several violins a few weeks ago, and the Library of Congress, I saw a couple of Stradivariuses, and a Guarnerius, and I always heard the stories about Guarnerius not being as good a slick a craftsman as Stradivarius was, but he knew how to make them sound good. His violin sometimes sounded better than Strad's. But it was real obvious, looking at the real things right there, you could see, like this scrape job, how pretty and slick a Stradivarius was. And the Guarnerius had to where you'd scrape crossways like this, and you could see he just didn't do as clean a job as finish work. But the Guarnerius sounded better than even the Stradivarius did. Really a great sounding guitar is right. There's a fine point of making it light enough to really sound great, but still heavy enough to stay together for a while. Those old Martins, they had that down just right. Might be the reason I copy my guitars after those more than anything else. Real pretty wood. Martins were always beautifully finished, chiseled and sanded, and even on the inside of them, and constructed to exactly the right weight of the braces, and they knew how to do that from years and years and years back. I think old Mr. Martin was a professional cabinet maker to start with, and he knew about making perfect joints. And I've seen some guitars from the 1830s that were real early examples of probably some that he made himself, and they were just gorgeous workmanship in them, perfect, everything. Sometimes I use this old Martin fingerboard, an old wore out fingerboard for a pattern. There's the 14th fret. That's there, so the end of the dovetail is all the way back about right there. See, I just eyeball the end of this. You can see the level. There maybe is a 1/16 of an inch at the top there. You'll mark it square first, then make it so it's got about the same as that little 1/16 gap that was in the top of the box there. On the top of the box, so we got to make it on the bottom of this to make it all even up. I don't measure much, but I know that's about a 1/16 of an inch.
I have never seen anybody that had a better eye. He just knows when it's right.
I've had these same two little blocks of wood that I've cut dovetail with these same two pieces for probably 25 years. So it's cut pretty much a dovetail on the tabletop. I used to cut dovetails on there just any way I could. Whittle and chisel and whatever. Which I love using my knife, but for something like that, it can be done so much more accurately and straighter. A lot of companies these days put bolts in them. I just like traditional stuff. And I like these dovetail joints because it's how the old ones were done. I'm always just a fan of those old guitars so much that I would just like to do them the way they did. Any excitement there? I'm gonna make a cut right here that probably don't need to show the Asia people. All it needs is just 1/2 of RCH. I'll do it. I've told people this before. You know, some of my guitars now bring just lots of money on the internet and stuff, which that means nothing to me. I don't sell them for prices like that. But if somebody's really out there using it, making pretty music on one of my guitars, that's the biggest compliment and the most exciting thing that can happen to me in this whole instrument making business. Is
there are other builders that say, well, we can get by with that. But Wayne, if you look inside of one of Wayne's guitars, they're just as pretty inside as they are outside.
Sometimes I'm amazed at it myself, you know, when I see something come out and I can't feel like, well, you know, I'm not sure I had that much to do with that. Stuff like that just happens, you know. You know, you feel like you must have bound to have been given some kind of a gift to do this stuff. I'm getting up to the age, you know, where I don't know for sure that I'll ever make another 400, you know. I guess number 500 will be a pretty big deal too. So I don't know for sure, you know, what I'll do with that. Spencer claims he ordered it. And if he really wants it, I imagine he would probably get it. Because he's a nice young fella and sort of carrying on our tradition of work. And an awful good musician. And probably nobody I know better to have it. So if he wants it, he'll probably get it. Because if we can keep the kids playing, learning to play, and I mean that helps everything. They'll be this old time music. We'll always have it to listen to, and they'll, those young kids grow up. They're going to be needing guitars, and so that's something that's very important to me.
He says, I'm getting burnt out with these trips. He said, I'd rather be in the shop working. He said, some of these days I think I'm just going to stay in the shop working. So that's his whole everything.
On my waking hours, I spend mostly in this shop, and the other thing I like to do is play music, and I do go out and do that some. But actually, my true favorite thing to do is just work in this shop, and I work in here, as long as I can stay awake, usually. $450 some. It's still pretty exciting. When I first started making them back in the 60s, that pocket knife was pretty much all I had. I mean, it could be done, I could get a guitar made. It was pretty nice, but it just took a tremendous amount of work and time to do it. And now I still pretty much do the same thing. I've just got a few more tools and can do it a little easier and a little faster and a little better. Besides it being a nice product turned out, it's an awful lot of fun to do it. And it's like almost like a therapy for me, if I'm tense or stressed out, and I can sit down and start whittling on this piece of wood, trying to turn it into a guitar neck, to me is the best therapy I can get. The action looks good. I think there was something to these old guys that used to sit on the front porch of their home or down at the store or whatever and just whittle on a piece of wood, making nice long little curly cues of whittling, and I think that was a relaxing, therapeutic thing to do. And that's sort of what I get out of it. And besides getting that, I get a guitar neck every time I do it too. Red Wing tune works on it.